What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Tonight I wanted to talk about yet another bingo. Today I wanted to talk about Bally's Bright Spot, which was made in 1952. Now, Bright Spot was the follow-on game to Frolics, which, if you'll recall, had a fairly complicated scoring scheme compared to the games that came before, and most especially for a 6-card, which normally had fixed odds based on the card on which you won. Frolics had advancing odds, which was pretty cool and unusual. Well, Bright Spot took that back down to some really basics. There are 6 cards. Each card has a slightly different arrangement of the same 25 numbers, which are represented by the holes in the playfield. And as you shoot your ball and land in one of the holes, it will light the same number on each of the cards. If you get 3, 4, or 5 in a row on any of the cards, then you win, up to a maximum payout of 200. And that's 200 replays. Now, this is the 7th game off of Bally's bingo line. And as I mentioned before, as a follow-on to a fairly complicated game, it was really simple. They actually removed the automated ball lifter and brought back the manual ball lifter for some reason. My guess is either for cost or to try to make things more familiar to people compared to what they were used to playing in flipper games. Now, the unique feature of Bright Spot, it's not really a unique feature, but the big draw of Bright Spot is that it will spot randomly a number after you shoot your first ball. Now, it always spots the center number of one of the 6 cards. And as I've talked before, if you have that center number spotted, that's a very powerful feature, because the center number, of course, connects to multiple lines. You got your vertical, you got your horizontal, and then you've got your 2 primary diagonals, all of which will score if you get 3, 4, or 5 in a row. So if you have that number spotted, it makes earning that 3, 4, or 5 that much easier. Now, let's talk about payouts. As I mentioned, they are normally fixed. Well, in this case, Bally had not moved to the more traditional 3 in a row on card 1 scores 1 value, card 2 scores another, and so forth. They stuck with fixed payouts for each card. And so that means it didn't necessarily make economic sense to load up all 6 cards, because you got the same payout no matter what. So, to be a bit more clear here, you get 4 replays for 3 in a row, any 3 in a row. You get 24 replays for 4 in a row, any 4 in a row. And you get 200 replays for any 5 in a row, and that's on any card. So what I'm saying is, if you put in a nickel and you light card number 1, if you're good at making numbers, and card number 1 usually has easy numbers to make. So if you're good at making those numbers, then it's unlikely that you need to go through the trouble of lighting the other 5 cards, if you see what I'm saying. But with Bright Spot, the spotted number feature steps at mystery intervals. So if you were to put in a single coin, it may not spot you anything. So that first card that you have lit, it may not spot the center number on it. It's not a guaranteed thing based on the number of coins that you input. So it just depends on your play style and how much money you have left. Now, this game being a 6 card looks fairly challenging. At this point, they still had cards 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 in the flipped positions. So 3 is in 4's place and 4 is in 3's place, and so forth. That would be a little interesting, but because of the fixed payout nature, it doesn't really matter. You know, if you're going for a full complement game anyway, it doesn't really matter. It really only matters when you see the number spot on card number 3 and you expect it to be the 20 and it's the 17 instead. Now, for players back in 1952, that wouldn't have been an issue, but for myself, I know it would be. Now let's talk about the artwork. The artwork harkens back to another 6-card game, Bally's Bright Lights. And you have essentially a curved surface representative of the Earth, which contains the 6 bingo cards with green grass in this orb and kind of a brown patch that contains all of the cards and a ribbon running through that connects them all or encloses them. It's very attractive, that portion. Up above that, on the horizon of this orb, you have a city. And that city is laid out all the way from left to right. And in the middle, you have written in stage lights, bright spot. Then up above, you have 5 very large women towering over this city on the orb. And they are each listening to and driven by these musical notes, which are flying by on a visible staff behind their heads. The artwork is incredibly attractive. I just think the scene is a little strange, taken as a whole. But, as usual, the artist has knocked it way out of the park. The artwork is fantastic. And, I think that curved surface with the city on top is just beautiful. And then the ladies, of course, are representing, what's happening in the city. It's a fun time. Now, let's look at the playfield. This game has the split front white light towers, which Bally was using at this time. The typical 25-hole orientation and the ball return down at the bottom center. And the numbers, as usual, taper from 7 on the first row down to 3 on the bottom row. Surrounding the playfield are the long coiled springs, which allow the ball to bounce. And you have your normal posts in the normal Bally Bingo orientation with 4 at the top, allowing a small maze all the way through the playfield to help guide the ball. And I don't know if I've talked about this before, but the way that the posts are laid out on a Bally Bingo is just phenomenal. The way Don Hooker, who was the game's designer and traditionally designed most of the bingos, at least that's the common knowledge. The way he thought to lay out those posts and the way that he tested to make sure that that post layout would work, the man is a genius. Because when the ball travels through those posts, bounces off of them, is nudged aside by them. Everything that happens with the ball travel because of those posts is wonderful. I mean, if you have the skill to actually control the ball, by grabbing the cabinet, grabbing the side rails and moving it around without tilting, it's all because of the post placement. And once you've trapped a ball or two, you can, of course, rebound off of those balls, which is yet another element. But the post placement allows for some very interesting play. You don't have to be directly below a hole to nudge a ball right into that number. You can nudge from the side. The way that it glances off of a post will determine which number it goes into. There's so very much involved with the post placement and getting the number that you want to make in the game. It's just, there is nothing like it. It is really something else. So I haven't talked about the artwork at all, I realized, on the playfield. Through it all, you have wound another musical staff with notes flying through as it weaves from left to right and right to left and so forth, all the way down. You have a couple of ladies looking on, and the whole thing is set on a field of stars on a field of pink. It's quite attractive. The ball return down at the bottom is set up like a very bright light, where there are rays of light coming off of it. It's pretty cool looking. As far as the cabinet artwork, it also carries a musical motif with a stylized representation of a staff and a few musical notes heading here and there. It's an attractive game. This also makes a list of games that I would really like to play one day. I've never seen one in real life. But just like all the 6 cards, they all have their own individual appeal. And to me, this one's appeal is shooting your first ball and seeing which number is spotted, because it's going to vary from game to game, and that's going to make all the difference in what you shoot for. Well, thank you very much for joining me. That's all for tonight. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.